All right. Welcome, everyone. We have just started our Dickinson Perspectives Residential Life virtual session. I'm going to just take a couple of seconds to let all of our registrants make their way in. We have a really great group of attendants today. Very excited about that. My name is Sharon Kleinings. I'm an admissions counselor in the Office of Admissions. One of my roles has been to help coordinate some of these sessions. So we really appreciate that you're taking time out of your lives to be here today. I want to start off by saying we hope you are well. We hope you are safe. If you are an admitted or accepted student into the class of 2024, congratulations. We're so excited that you're here. And if you're a junior or a sophomore still figuring out your path, we are thrilled that you're a part of this conversation because we have points that can touch upon if you're in the very starts of your college search or if you're really delving into where you want to spend the next 4 years of your life starting this fall. So there's going to be at the end a full list of other virtual options that are available that are being hosted by admissions, but this session is all about Res Life. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to Amanda, and I'll just make one quick publication as well. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button. We will be answering questions as they come through, but there'll be a full section at the end for our student panelists to answer questions. And just as a broadcast as well, we are recording this session for anyone who was not able to attend. There was a lot of popularity around this topic. It's very popular. It's a big part of your residential experience as a student at Dickinson. So again, want to welcome you all and turn the microphone over to Amanda George.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate admissions organizing this for us, and I'm really grateful that you all are able to join us this evening. My name is Amanda George. I'm the Director of Residence Life and Housing. I'm going to hopefully keep my little intro short so we can turn it over to what's most important, which are your questions that you've submitted and some of the more frequently asked questions that we get. But I do want to take a moment to talk about why I believe our Residence Life program is so special and why it's somewhat unique maybe to Dickinson. So we are here at Dickinson a 4-year residential liberal arts institution. So our students live on campus for all 4 years. Here in Residence Life and Housing, we align our work with the mission of the institution, which is to prepare our graduates to be engaged citizens for the common good. And so we hope and we know that in residence, our students are practicing what they're learning. They're practicing sustainability, they're practicing civic engagement, and they're developing a global perspective. And that is why we value our experience and our 4-year residential practice so much. We know that a lot of students are coming from a lot of different places, and we know that there are so many great opportunities as folks transition to living with peers and living with other people. We also know there are some challenges during that, and so there are many folks here in our office that help support new students and continuing students. In addition to myself, we have 3 live-in staff members who are master's levels professionals who serve and support our students throughout their time here. In addition, we have some really fantastic student staff, including resident advisors that are here to support, to get to know our students and really help connect them to different resources and connect them to each other on campus. So many of you know that we've gone remote for this semester, and I'm really missing them. And I'm so grateful to have 3 of them with us tonight to help answer your questions, because they're really in a great spot to do that, being students themselves, having gone through the first year themselves in residence, but then also supporting other first years as they become RAs as well. So I'm gonna jump right into letting them introduce themselves. We have a few questions they've already submitted. We'll be taking questions along the way, and so feel free to ask us anything. And if we don't get to your question, we'll share some info about how we can follow up too. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jake to introduce himself.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. I'm currently a sophomore at Dickinson. I am a double major in international studies and Italian studies with a minor in political science. And I'm from a small town about half an hour outside of Carlisle, so Dickinson's very close to me. And I am a resident advisor, a tour guide, an editor of our school newspaper, and a member of the Italian Club.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Murphy. I am a senior at Dickinson and I'm from West Pittston, Pennsylvania. That's in the northeast part of Pennsylvania near Scranton. I'm a tour guide. I am a sprinter on the varsity track and field team. I was an RA my junior year, and this past year I was also a house and apartment manager. And I'm also society on campus. And my favorite calf meal is the enchiladas from the Cove.
Hi guys, my name is Shay Player. I am also a sophomore here at Dickinson, and I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. My major is chemistry, and in addition to being a tour guide on campus, I'm a ACE Peer Mentor, which is a peer mentoring group for students of color, international students, and first generation students. I'm also an RA, treasurer of club basketball, a chemistry tutor, and the sophomore class president. And my favorite place on campus is the front desk of admissions or the second floor of Tome. And my favorite calf meal is salmon with Greek salad.
Oh, Amanda, I think you're still muted.
I'm
Oh,
muted,
there
of course.
you go.
I have a feeling I'll do that a few times, so I apologize. We have a few broad topics we're going to talk about, including housing overall, both for first years and upper class students, what to expect. Roommates, that's a really popular conversation and topic, so we'll talk about a few things about roommates, packing, and then just some miscellaneous questions. And as we mentioned, feel free to keep sending them in, and we can address any that get added along the way, even if they don't fit into some of these themes. So the first question I'm actually going to tackle before I fully hand it over. So what is the roommate preference form, or what are some of the next steps? A lot of folks are asking about that. So in May, you will get some communication about a lot of different forms you have to complete as a first year student, and one of them will be the Residence Life and Housing one. And so you'll actually have access to a website that lists tons of forms, unfortunately. A lot of them are really kind of exciting as a first year student, I would say, but I'm a little weird, so maybe not. But including our roommate preference form, which is due July 1. It's not necessarily a first come, first serve, so it doesn't really matter when you do it between May and July, so you have plenty of time to do it. It asks you some questions about yourself and what you're looking for in a roommate. It's also where you can list if you have a certain request for a roommate. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but it gives us some general information about what you're looking for, particularly around the roommate. Some folks asked what are the housing, or what are the options for first year housing, and I believe Jake was going to take that one, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, for different areas of campus where first years live. And so one area is called Morgan Field, and there are two main dorms there. And then referred to as the quads, which has a couple different dorms of smaller sizes where first years will live. In terms of double rooms with a roommate, however, we do have options for a triple room, which you would have two other roommates, or you can try to request a single room. We do have a couple of those scattered throughout the first year dorms. And then apart from that, if you do have a disability or accommodation, and so you would have to go through with Residence Life and Housing for that. But besides that, yeah, that's.
Thank you. Some folks are also interested in learning about options for upper class students. Michael, do you want to talk about that one real quick?
I can jump in and take that one. It looks like he might be having some technology
Thanks, Shay.
issues. So options available for upperclassmen students are the dorms that Jake just mentioned. They're upperclassmen dorms, but the same style with doubles, singles, triples. And then there are suite style housing in the upper and lower quads in Morgan Field. And it's 2 double rooms connected by either a bathroom or a common room. And it varies from building to building, and I think even floor to floor. Another option is Dickinson owns apartment buildings in downtown Carlisle and also pretty close to campus. And so that's another option for students. We also have upperclassmen students, and there are also townhouses, which house about, I think, 6 to 8 students. And there's a kitchen, a living room, bathrooms, and that's another option. And then there's specialty housing, which I'll just talk about, because I was gonna talk about that anyway, which is it's themed housing. And so you apply, this is an upperclassmen housing, so it's sophomores and up, and you apply to specifically to the house managers, and they decide who lives in the house. And so I think there's 27 special interest housing options, and they range. So some of the topics are the outing clubhouse for people who are super into outdoors. There's the Spectrum House for LGBTQ identified students, and there's the Womenist Collective, and there is the Romance Language House. There are sororities and fraternities that have houses. So it really varies, but it's a house with a theme as opposed to living in a house with just some friends.
Thanks, Shay. Welcome back, Michael. I don't know if you can hear us quite yet. So overall, most of our first years, or all of our first years, live in more traditional spaces and probably what you would expect in most residence halls with your long hallways and rooms off of it. And then as our students continue and so become sophomores, juniors, and seniors, there's more independent style houses and housing, as Shay mentioned. Our next little slide here, as I mentioned, is probably one of the more popular ones about roommates. And so one of the questions we get asked most often is, how do I choose a roommate? And so we do have an option where you can request a roommate. And so if you identify with someone in advance, you have the ability to do that. Or you can let us know your preferences and we will match you. And so I want to give everyone a chance to talk about their experience coming into Dickinson and what they chose to do. Shay, do you mind starting? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So I chose a roommate by filling out the roommate survey, but you can also request a roommate through directly. So if you meet them through the Facebook group, or you meet them through other groups or events, you guys can request each other on a roommate, but you still sort of fill out the survey. But I just filled out the survey and I was placed in a triple. Yeah, and it was a great time.
Yeah, so I can tell you about my experience. So I lived in a double my first year, and I actually roomed with my twin brother, Ryan. And so we were able to request to live together, and that was honored by Dickinson. And you can also do the same as long as it's a mutual request. Residence Life is usually willing to honor that request.
Yeah. And I did mine ran to my first year at Dickinson, so that was the best option for me. And yeah, Res Life matched me with a person that had the same sleeping and stuff like that with me, so it worked in the long run, which was nice.
Jake, I think you're also going to take this next one. Is it better to be matched with a roommate, or is it better to select your own roommate?
Honestly, it just depends on preference. If you Dickinson with, or you meet someone in a Dickinson first year class group chat that you think you'd have similar, I would totally just signing up to live with them. However, I think it is better to live with people that you share, I said before, because you spend a lot of your time in your room in college, and it's important to not only get along with your roommate, but to establish where you'll both be happy and where you both won't be on your toes all the time because you have, so yeah, it works out either way if you know what you're getting into.
I apologize. We did get one question that I think seems to match right now. I'm hoping Michael will answer about athletes. And so requesting another athlete and how many athletes tend to live together, things like that. Michael is an athlete, so I think could probably answer that best for us.
Yeah, so I'll just share my experience on the track team. Several first-year athletes on track do happen to request to live with each other. However, I would say there's probably an equal amount who live with non-track athletes. Some of them know others coming in, some of them don't, some of them have gone random. So I think it's really up to you. I think if you're a fall athlete, especially, you'll have a chance to meet many of your incoming classmates. And so, I would encourage you to think about if you want to share this pretty much the same exact schedule with someone who's your roommate. And if that's something that you're interested in, go for it. If you meet someone that you might want to live with, if not, that's okay too. I think you'll be in good company either way.
Thank you. So just a little bit of statistical information. We see about 30 to 35% of students request their roommate each year. And so some folks decide to do it, but you're definitely not left out, or it's not unusual. The majority of folks are matched by us. And so really, as everyone has mentioned, whatever is best for you is going to be the best thing and is what's most important. But I think one of the things is, regardless, is having some honest conversations up front with your roommate, whether you're trying to match with somebody or whether you're matched with us. Having some of those conversations up front is going to be important. And so Shay, can you talk a little bit about some of those conversations that you think, as both a student and then also as an RA, what are some things that are helpful for future roommates to talk about before they start living together?
Sure. So I think that some of the things that we talk about, like in the meetings that we have with our residents and the roommate survey, but also things you should talk about now, is who's allowed in the room, like what's going to be the guest policy, the friend policy, the overnight policy, who's going to bring what, and if you're going to share those things. So some people may rent a refrigerator from the school, or you guys may decide to purchase one. Just work out like what the other person is going to be allowed to use of your things. Are we sharing food? Are we sharing shampoo? Figure that sort of thing out. Also, maybe this is less important, but if you want to coordinate or plan a design or aesthetic for the room, you guys can also coordinate that. Bedtime is also bedtime, what time you guys will go to bed, and lighting preferences for bedtime, and what you'll do if someone has to stay up late at night to do homework or to take care of something. Do you want them to leave the room and go to the common room? Is it okay for them to stay in? If they have a late night phone call, what are your feelings about that? Also, what you'll do in the event of conflict is something that we discussed at the very beginning. How will you approach each other? Will you go to the RA? Will you sit and have a conversation? Will you write letters to each other? Those are all important things to discuss with your roommate.
Thanks, Shay. We have some resources on our website as well about that. It's basically a list of a lot of things Shay mentioned and some other topics that as you're talking to future roommates would be helpful to review. Knowing that you'll get along and that you like the same things is really important. That you like the same TV shows or like the same music, that's great. And it's also important to note some of the things that Shay said about sleeping and studying and light preferences, to make sure that it'll be a good fit. So check out our website. We also send it out over the summer as you're having these conversations, so you'll definitely see it, but we encourage you to have some of those good conversations up front. So this is, we got a lot of questions about packing, and I'm sure a lot of folks are starting to think about that as we turn into late spring and early summer. And so I asked all of our students to talk about what are some things that they're really glad that they brought with us or with them.
What are things I'm glad I brought with me? I guess having a mini fridge really helped, just because my roommate didn't bring one, and so that helped him too, because he could put his stuff in my fridge, which was nice. But like I bought all some drinks that I just like to have if I was studying in the room and stuff, and so it was nice to keep it in the refrigerator. And also I bought mine from Walmart, so I've used it every year of college, which is nice. So I'll continue to have that, and I found it to be a really
Michael, is there something that you brought that you're glad you brought with you?
Yes, it's a small but important thing, and that's a shower caddy. I know there was a question in the chat about communal bathrooms. So there is a communal bathroom on each floor, and they are going to be like usually a few doors down from you. Depending on the layout of your dorm, it might be on a certain wing, and there will be either a men's bathroom or women's bathroom. And we also have single-use bathroom, like gender-inclusive bathrooms as well. And we can talk more about that later. But yeah, that's something that I found useful because you have to walk down the hallway and carry all your shower stuff. So I would recommend a shower caddy.
Shay, is there something Shay, is there something you're glad you brought with you?
I was thinking very hard and long about this question, and I don't know, I was thinking shower shoes because Michael said shower caddy. I think that's super important. Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, a lot of times when you're in a communal shower, shower shoes are going to be important. A lot of people just use flip-flops. I know the Old Navy ones are really popular because they're fairly inexpensive. Something like that can be helpful as you're sharing a shower. We do have housekeeping staff and they clean it pretty regularly, but pretty much everyone wears shower shoes when you're going in. What are some things that you should avoid bringing? What are some things you wish you left at home? Jake, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, first I'm seeing a couple questions about the climate of Carlisle, and since I live in Central PA, like I can answer that. I know it's a pretty seasonal climate. Like we do go through all 4 seasons. Like you think, so if you're coming from a relatively warm climate, you want to bring definitely a couple pants, maybe even like a pair or 2 of like boots, snow boots, or just like but I would say it's pretty warm through October, and then it gets cold back up. So yeah. And then in terms of what you should avoid bringing, I don't know, during both my, I've brought too much clothes. You realize that you really don't need 70 t-shirts in your dresser when you're, because you end up wearing the same or whatever. And also when you bring less clothes, you have more space for other things, which is nice. So just really kind of think about how much you want to bring with you. And if you're traveling from far away, you don't want to have like 4 suitcases full of clothes, because chances are you won't need all of them.
Thanks, Jake. We also got a question before this about sheets. And so all of our beds are twin XL. So you're able to buy twin XL. They're just a little bit longer than your typical twin sheets. You can get them at the bookstore, but also as we get closer to the start of the fall, a lot of some of our, big stores will have them, Target, Walmart, etc., online. So whatever you're most comfortable with. Some things that are prohibited, we were also asked about that. We encourage folks to decorate their space. Shay mentioned that a little bit earlier about maybe planning with your roommate if you want a color scheme. Some people do that, some people don't. It just depends on your kind of vibe and your personality. So we encourage folks to decorate, but we ask them not to do anything that'll permanently damage the space. So not screwing anything into the walls, etc. We also, because of our fire codes, string lights are prohibited, and that's pretty popular for folks, particularly in colleges. And so we ask you to leave your string lights at home, and anything with an open heating element. So a George Foreman or a hot plate or something like that, we ask you to leave that at home. All of our buildings have kitchens with stoves and things like that, and so you'll still be able to cook even without those things. So it's better to leave them at home. Going to move on to the next slide, which is miscellaneous. I think Shay wants to talk a little bit about what to expect on move-in day.
Move-in day is probably one of my favorite days of the year. And so what happens is all of the first-year students, so you're driving, and there's like DPS officers there and like res life there, staff there to instruct you. But you basically drive to your dorm, and there's usually like a short line, and like RAs arrive there, HAMS, housing and apartment managers, community advisors, they're all there, and other staff, and they unload the car for you. They bring everything upstairs to your room for you. You sign in, you get your key, your parents park the car, and then you go in and like unpack. It's so much fun. I think even, carrying a lot of stuff, but it was just so much fun. Everyone's super excited. Parents are excited. But you can expect to have your stuff moved in. That's what you can expect.
You can expect a lot of energy. For introverts, it can be a little overwhelming. I love it, and it's a little overwhelming all on the same day, but it's a pretty cool experience. It's pretty awesome. People from all over campus turn out to welcome folks, which is really cool, as Shay mentioned. Michael, I think, was going to talk about resident advisors, what they do, some of the programs and events that folks can expect on their floors and in their buildings.
Yeah, so the best way I can describe a resident advisor or an RA is really just a resource for you. One of their biggest tasks is upholding community standards and building community. So they're going to get to know you and plan events that you want to take part of. I know there were some questions about, what really goes on in a residence hall. And I think there was also a question about, what is it like making friends in a residence hall? An RA does play a big role in that. I like to think of RAs as someone who connects the dots. And so they're going to try to really make sure that you're getting in touch with people on your floor through events such as ice cream socials. I know one year, this past fall, actually, we had an event where we had Ritas for our residents, and we had the Dickinson mascot come along to take pictures with. So there's a bunch of different events that you can expect. Most of them surround some sort of food, I would say. And that makes it really easy just to get FaceTime with people that you're living with throughout your dorm. A really easy way to make friends. And there's also a lot of opportunities outside of the dorm to make friends as well. So I imagine that many of you are very involved in high school right now, and by doing and continuing that involvement, you'll also be able to make friends that way too.
Thanks, Michael. We got a question that came in when folks registered about guesting in the room. And so we do permit guests, we do permit visitors, overnight and day visitors. We ask that folks communicate with their roommates, and it's important that roommates agree and talk about those expectations up front. And so as you're having conversations conversations this summer with your roommate. That's one of the things to talk about, especially if you're expecting to have a guest stay with you, and what it kind of is acceptable, whether partners are acceptable or whether it's just friends, etc. But yes, we don't have any limitations there. We just ask that they don't move in with you, but that's pretty straightforward and pretty rarely happens. We had some other questions come in, so I've been trying to track them here. I know somebody asked about the experience of living in a triple, and so I'm hoping Shay can tackle that one, as she lived in a triple her first year.
Sure. So I actually really enjoy living in a triple. The triple rooms, there's no forced triple, so they're like a lot larger than the double rooms. And I think that it was the most challenging thing about living in a triple maybe is that like you got like two people maybe closer than the other person, and like that can kind of get weird at times, but we all like went to bed around the same time, woke up around the same time, and even though like one person was an athlete, and you sort of established rules up front about at the beginning about like, you know, talking on the phone in the room and like company and friends and stuff like that. But I think really like any live-in situation, double or triple, can work as long as you just communicate expectations. And I think that's why it went so well for us, is that like we communicated expectations at the beginning and sort of stuck to them. And I see that someone asks, is it harder to get into a triple for your first year than a double? I think yes, because there are a lot less triples on campus than a double. And it's something I think you're able to check off on your roommate preference form, but just because you say that you're like, you want to be in a triple, and because there's so few of them, you may not, but yeah.
The majority of first year students live in doubles because it's the majority of our spaces. We have a handful of triples and a handful of singles, and so there'll be a few folks who live in them. Somebody asked about air conditioning. So all of our residential spaces have air conditioning. Generally, the AC is on from when you get here in August until right about what we call fall pause, which is our fall break in mid-October. And then generally the AC is turned off. And it depends on the spring. If we have a mild spring, the AC might not come back on, but if it's a pretty warm one, facilities management will bring them back in. So sometimes you have AC units in your room, and sometimes you have a window unit in your window, depending on the building. But yes, all of our spaces have AC during our hot seasons. Somebody asked about command strips. Yes, you can use command strips. We just ask that you be mindful. Surprisingly, command strips actually have instructions on them. It's something I didn't know until I started working in Res Life. I just thought you could put them on up. But you are actually supposed to do some very specific things with them, which to help prevent damage. And so if you do those things, it typically won't damage the wall. And then some folks asked about senior housing, which I believe Jake was gonna help us answer. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So after your first year, when you get into upperclassmen housing, it works as a lottery system. So the seniors have the first choice of housing. So really anything besides first year dorms are open for their choosing. I would say a lot of seniors choose to live in either the special interest houses on campus. We have a couple different like apartment type buildings too. And then besides that, there's a couple townhouses on campus, but like Amanda said earlier, Dickinson College is a 4-year residential college, so they will have to live in campus housing.
Great, thank you. We got a question too about athletes specifically that I'll try to tackle. I think there might be some more, but there's two that I see right away. One is about athletes moving in. And so typically athletes will move in earlier than our full first year class because they come earlier for preseason. And so the experience will be slightly different because there won't just be as many people coming to campus at the same time, but our coaches try to do a really great job of welcoming folks. In those first few weeks, there will be a lot of bonding with your team. I'm sure Michael could probably talk about that a little bit. Teams spend a lot of time together in those first few weeks, getting to know each other. And there will be some On move-in day, we have some opportunities for both students and families to learn a little bit more about our community, and those things happen for athletes on move-in day as well. And so families, there will be some sessions in the afternoon for you to learn a little bit more about Dickinson and what to expect from Dickinson and how families can be involved. We also had a question about if you meet another athlete on your team, when would you be writing their name in as a roommate? And so you do that on your roommate preference form. You have an opportunity to give preferences about your roommate and or identify a specific person. If you are an athlete, I encourage you to talk to your coach about that. We do have some coaches who encourage folks to live with people outside their team. And so I just encourage you to talk to either some fellow players or some coaches about what they encourage in some of their experiences as well. Let's see. Sharon, what are some of the other questions that are coming up? I'm losing track a little bit, so I don't want to miss any of them.
Yeah, we have a really, really strong group asking lots of really thoughtful, insightful questions. So thank you, everyone. We have gotten a couple more questions about, did any of you, this is for the student volunteers, did any of you decide to room with your roommate again after sophomore year? I think that's kind of asking about, like, did you feel that the housing process, that the form that you got was helpful and matched you in a really strong way?
I did
Well,
not.
yeah, me neither, because I became an RA my sophomore year. So, yeah.
I'm best friends with my roommate from both of my
RAs
roommates.
don't have roommates, you get your own room. So,
Okay, and then another one we asked that was asked, and it kind of got asked in two different places. If you go for a random roommate, when do you find out who they are, and when are housing placements released? I think, Amanda, maybe that might be a good one for you to tackle.
There we go. Sure. So we ask that folks fill up their form by July 1st, and then we spend a little bit of time, a good amount of time on our end processing that and going through that. And then we typically let folks know their roommates and their housing placement by the first week in August.
And I think off of that, I can tag on another question, was if a roommate and a student request each other, is it still possible to be placed in a triple with an extra person? So if you only put one person down on your form, could you possibly still be placed into a triple?
Generally not, but we do have some folks who will request 2 roommates, and then those are usually people we try to prioritize for our triples, because typically that indicates to us that they want a triple. But generally, if you have someone in mind, we don't typically put you in a triple, but it varies year to year depending on what the requests are.
We got a really exciting question. Someone's already eager to be an RA by the time they get to college. So they asked a little bit about what is the application process to become a residential advisor? And I think, Jake, you said that you wanted to tackle that one.
yeah, sure. Becoming an RA typically opens after the start of the second semester, and where you need to recommendations either by professors, athletic coaches, your current RA, and then from there, it turns into a group application process, which takes place in February. And what the group application process looks like is you're paired with about maybe 5 other students, and you complete different activities where current RAs monitor you and judge you not judge you, just observe your behaviors, like working with others, how well you do in a leadership role, etc. And then from there, Residence Life and Housing hosts individual interviews where you will meet with a staff member and either a student RA or a student community advisor, and then they interview you from there, and then usually find out if you spring break. That's kind of like a shortcut version of the application process, but that's
I think we got a question, can students choose to be placed into a triple? So when you fill out your roommate preference form, if you identify 2 other roommates, then we will prioritize you for a triple room. As Shay mentioned earlier, we have a fairly limited available. Typically, we're able to meet all the requests, but there has been a year or two where there's been more requests than we can meet, and usually we try to reach out and work with you then.
Another one of the questions that we got that I think kind of ties in also the whole experience about being at Dickinson and being in Carlisle is how close are the dining halls, laundry rooms, and other amenities from the residence halls? So student volunteers, can you share with us a little bit about what your experience of being, having accessibility to the local, the dining hall and the local hubs in town?
I can answer that. So laundry in the first year residence halls are in the dorms. So they're either on your floor or the floor above or below you. The dining hall is at a pretty central location on campus. I'd say in the freshman dorms, the dining hall is a 5 to 10 minute walk, more or less, from all of the first year housing options. The gym is closer to the lower and upper quads, which so the gym's closer to there than it is like the dorms on Morgan Field, which is Adams and Dreyer, but they're still again about a 5 to 10 minute walk. So you can walk from one side of campus to the other side of campus in 10 minutes. So everything's pretty closely located.
Very cool. Awesome. One of our other questions is, what is the storage options like as a first year student? And I think Michael was going to take a handle on that one.
Yeah, so it is a little different for everyone. So I'll just tell you about my experience. I chose to get a storage unit after my first year, and that storage unit was in Carlisle. And a lot of students will choose to share, and there's many different options in the Carlisle area. I think as soon as you get off the highway, there's you can see a few storage units. So that's what I did. I'm glad I did that, and I would also recommend that, especially if you live a little bit farther away. And as a first year, it's always helpful to make friends with upperclassmen who might have cars. That way they might be able to help you when you're trying to get to that storage unit if your parents or another person in your family is unable to do that. I got some help from some of my friends as a first year, and then I was lucky enough to have a car this past year, and then I helped some other friends of mine. And that's also true more specifically for international students.
Oh, I hope we didn't lose him. Oh. Okay. Okay, so we have another really great question that's come in about, is it possible to move in a little earlier than the official move-in date? Is it possible if somebody else is already moving in, such as a sibling or a twin, to move in with them?
So typically we ask that folks arrive on move-in day for a variety of reasons. One, it can be fairly isolating to come a day earlier because there's not really anyone in the building. There will be some athletes here, but generally they're spending most of their time with their fellow athletes in preseason. And so it's pretty rare. It's typically folks don't come earlier than their move-in day, but we also know there are some extenuating circumstances. So you can feel free to reach out to us, reslife@dickinson.edu, and we can talk through that a little bit. But typically, we try to limit that for a variety of reasons. One, it being isolating. There's also a little bit about the prep of getting the buildings ready. Our facilities management team turns over the buildings and gets them clean and ready for folks. That takes a little bit of time. So it's hard to accommodate a lot of earlier requests, but feel free, if there's kind of some extenuating circumstances, we can usually work with folks. And so feel free to reach out to us.
Great. I think a really great question, we're getting towards the end of our time here, but I think a really great question to maybe talk about to start off what that beginning of the moving process is going to look like, pre-orientation. Shay, would you mind talking a little bit about what it is and kind of what that looks like at Dickinson?
Sure. So pre-orientation, they're themed programs that last about 2 to 3 days before orientation, which is about a week for all of the first year students. And I would say a third, maybe to a half, I'm not sure about, excuse me, the numbers, sorry, participate in these pre-orientation programs. And so the one I went on was called, it was a rock climbing trip on the Appalachian Trail. So there are wild trips, which are hiking and like kayaking, canoeing, rock climbing. And then there are more like Dickinson focused programs. So like the mock trial team had one. There's one that explores like food in Carlisle. The Black Student Union hosts students. So different clubs will opt to host students for a pre-orientation. And it's just more of a get to know you and a more, I think, specific way. Yeah, and I would say the groups are between like 8 to 15 students in each pre-orientation, and they happen 3 to 4 days before regular orientation.
Thanks, Shay. So it looks like we're about out of time. I know there are some really great questions that we didn't get an opportunity to get to. I have a slide with some of our contact information. Just need to get to it. Oops, I forgot before we head out. We had mentioned earlier that there would be some opportunities to continue to connect with Dickinson. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that real quick.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. There's a number of virtual sessions coming up. So if you are an accepted student, maybe you've been seeing that on the Facebook page. If not, all of our virtual visits are available online at dickinson.edu/virtual visits. That's down on the bottom page. If you are a junior or younger, we recommend that you attend some of these virtual sessions. Engage with us in a way that you would have been doing if you could have come to campus this spring. We are also going to be offering interviews for juniors moving forward. So it's another thing to keep in mind. We want to encourage you, don't stress about this. We know that this is a new and challenging time, things that you are trying to tackle about what is your future going to look like while still trying to figure out the present. Know that your regional counselors are here to help, as are we here in this session. For admitted students, we strongly encourage you to visit the acceptance student page, attend virtual office hours with professors, connect with our amazing faculty and staff, reach out to say, Amanda George, if you have more questions, engage with the students who are available. We have a full list who are eager to connect with you via email. We're here to answer your questions during these challenging times. Just know that we're here to support at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Our contact information is here, including our general office account, my email, and our fantastic students who I know are willing to continue answering questions. I'm going to get the list of questions that we weren't able to answer, and I'll get back to you all within the next few days. Additionally, if there are any questions that come up, you can always feel free to reach out to either me directly or our office. Sharon actually helped us set up a virtual way for you all to book appointments with us. And so if it would be helpful to have a 15-20 minute conversation individually, feel free to reach out to us and we can set that up for you. We know that there are a lot of questions and we want to be able to answer them and provide you as much information as we can. We have some really fantastic, I work with a really great group of staff members who are always really eager to answer questions and get to know incoming students. And then I also have a really great group of student staff some of who you got to meet tonight that are also really excited to answer questions. So also a little plug, follow us on the Instagram. We're trying to increase our presence there and use it as a way to get some information out as well. And so right now we're focused on some of our kind of outgoing stuff, finishing up the semester, but shortly you'll start to see our messaging more for our incoming students and our incoming class. So it's really really great to virtually meet all of you, and I'm really glad you're able to join us. Thank you to Sharon and Admissions for setting this up, and thank you to Shay, Michael, and Jake for helping out tonight. Couldn't have done it without you. Y'all are awesome, and I hope y'all have a good night.